it. And thank you all to our 2021 Employee Learning Week. We wanted to offer some great resources to our chapter members. And so our theme this year has kind of been along the lines of what does ATD International offer and how are we connected with them? So Monday we started with the membership benefits, and then yesterday we had Morgan, who is with credentialing, which Sue, you are too, actually, right?
Yes.
But Morgan went over the capability model. Today, Sue is going to talk with us about certification and kind of how do you take action once you have maybe a learning plan of what you want to do. So there's lots of great resources through ATD. So I am pleased to have Sue with us today. And I apologize, Sue, I asked you for a bio and then I didn't have it pulled up. So do you mind if I just have you give a little bit of an intro about yourself?
Sure, no problem.
Thank you. Okay.
So I'm going to turn off my video in a moment. So, but if there's just a few of you here, we can maybe be a little less formal, but I know you're taping it, so we'll go through the presentation too. So welcome to today's session, Make Your Professional Development Goals Achievable with ATD. I'm Sue Caden, and I work for ATD. I'm in the credentialing department. For the last 3.5 years, I've been in credentialing. Prior to that, I actually ran the career development community practice at ATD. And before that, I did a lot of different things, including a lot of things that related to training or included training, but I was never formally a trainer. So I'm one of those accidental trainers that many of you are or have heard about, right? Now, we're going to primarily talk about the ATD professional certification programs, the CPTD and the APTD, but we're also going to touch on some other things about professional development as well. So let me turn off my video so I don't have to see myself in the corner. And then we'll keep going here. So here's what I'm planning to cover. First, we're going to talk briefly about setting a career goal for yourself, and then discuss the primary pathways to that goal. And we'll concentrate on professional certification as one way to achieve your goal, including the APTD and the CPTD. And of course, we'll take questions. So it's easy to get caught up in your busy life and then realize that you've been drifting along without a career or professional goal. Does that sound like anybody? Do you recognize yourself? I'm not talking about professional development goals here. I'm talking about longer term career goals, like what would you like to spend your time doing? What type of position gets you excited? Do you enjoy being an expert in a specific area, or do you love training or developing programs? Or do you aspire to a management role someday? If you're really not sure how to answer these questions, then a good resource is Keeping Your Career on Track, a TD at Work. It's available from ATD and it's free to members. And it's about $20 for non-members. Now, I admit I'm a little partial to this piece because I wrote it, but it really does take you through a step-by-step process to help you clarify your goals and identify gaps and create a plan to reach your career goal. So typically, professional development is an important part of your career planning. But talent development professionals are often like the cobbler's children who have no shoes. You're so busy developing everyone else that you forget to develop yourself. So if that sounds like you, let's talk about how to get started. So as I just mentioned, you need to start with your career goal. Do you want to be a technical expert, or do you aspire to a management role, or do you have something else in mind altogether? And the reason it's really important to sort of clarify that in your mind is until you do that, it's sort of like having, going on a trip without having a map or even any kind of a plan about how you're going to get there. So you really need a destination. Next, you need to do a gap analysis to identify any experience or knowledge and skill gaps, as well as any credentials that you might need for whatever that position is that you're aspiring to. And then finally, you do need your professional development plan. Your plan should identify focused areas you need to concentrate on, as well as the methods and sources you'd like to use for your professional development. Now, I don't know if any of you attended it, but yesterday, Morgan Hurt talked about ATD's capability model and the learning plan function. And that's a great way to look at your knowledge gaps and find ATD resources that can help you to fill them. However, there are multiple ways to close those gaps, including courses, professional certification, and degrees. Now, today we're going to focus on formal training programs and credentials that can help you, but there are other more informal methods as well that I know you know about, and those might be appropriate for you as well. So courses and workshops. Well, you're all familiar with courses offered through associations like ATD, as well as providers like LinkedIn Learning or workshops offered by your employer. Taking a course usually takes days or weeks to complete. It's on a focused topic, and it's typically once and done. It's usually a little bit less expensive than some of these other options, but not always. Now, professional certifications we're going to focus on in a minute, such as our APTD and CPTD, can help you to close your gaps and gain credibility with others. Most take less than a year to complete. They're aligned with an industry standard, and they require you to recertify every few years. Then finally, degrees, such as a master's in instructional design or organizational development. They can help you build knowledge and credibility too. However, degrees typically take more than 1 year to complete, and they're not necessarily aligned with an industry standard. There's also no requirement to stay up to date, and that's not too much of a problem until your degree is rather far in your rear view window, and people think then your knowledge is not up to date. So, what's a professional certification program? So when we talk about professional certifications, we're referring to programs that objectively assess your knowledge and skills against an established standard. The Talent Development Capability Model, released in January 2020, established a new global standard for talent development professionals. And ATD certifications are grounded in that talent development capability model. Now, it's important to note that the ATD certification programs are not training programs designed to teach you new content, though you will learn new things when preparing. They're really designed to test your current knowledge and skills to provide an external validation of your competence in the field. And a lot of times people will say to me, well, you know, if I take a class, then do I just take the exam? And I'm like, no, it's actually testing you must have experience in order to even test. And it's really testing your capabilities, and it's not the kind of test that you could just study something and then pass. So our professional certification programs are run by the ATD Certification Institute. It's an independent organization created by ATD to set industry standards. Now, both certifications are grounded in the research that was used to develop the ATD Talent Development Capability Model. If you're not familiar with it, the capability model encompasses the 3 domains of practice that outline the personal, professional, and organizational capabilities required for talent development professionals to be successful in the field. It demonstrates the need for talent development professionals to leverage their interpersonal skills and their professional expertise to generate a positive outcome. Now, these 3 domains are then broken into 23 capabilities, encompassing 188 knowledge and skill statements that outline what talent development professionals need to know and do. But don't worry, the certification exams are based on a subset of those knowledge and skill statements, so you're not going to be tested on all 188 concepts. So in order to achieve the APTD or the CPTD credential, there's several steps you'll need to take. First of all, you need to determine if you're eligible to apply for the credential. And there are 2 components required for eligibility: experience and professional development in talent development capabilities. The professional development requirement is new, is implemented to ensure that those taking the exam have adequate grounding in the material being tested. And I'm going to talk about that in more detail in a moment. You'll need to have a current resume that describes your talent development experience. You'll need to fill out an application documenting your employment and professional development that you've completed. And you'll need to agree to a code of ethics. You'll need to pay for your exam, and you'll need to prepare and pass the standardized exam. Finally, once you pass the exam, you'll need to recertify every 3 years through continuing education and other professional development activities. So what constitutes relevant years of experience? So people ask us this all the time. You'll need to have worked with adults performing talent development activities as described in the professional and or organizational capability domains of the talent development capability model. It's quite a mouthful. You'll see here those 2 domains include capabilities such as instructional design, training, delivery, and coaching, as well as organizationally focused capabilities such as change management and organization development. Now, the APTD requires 3 years of experience in the field, and the CPTD requires 5 years of experience. It does not have to be full-time experience. So, for example, if you're what we call an accidental trainer and you've been doing training as part of your current role, but not full-time, that still counts as long as the work you've been doing falls into these categories, these capabilities here on the screen. Now, how do you know if your professional development will count? You must have completed the professional development activities that are focused on those capabilities I described. It has to be trackable and reportable in the sense that proof of completion or attendance must be available. Each activity must be at least 30 minutes in length, and it must have been completed in the last 3 years for APTD and the past 5 years for CPTD. Acceptable learning activities include conferences and workshops, courses, webcasts, all provided by reputable organizations in the field. Now, professional development programs are not restricted to just programs provided by ATD, but it's also important to note that a current APTD credential fulfills professional development for CPTD. So, like, for example, I got my APTD a couple of years ago. If I want to take the CPTD, I automatically have the credential that fulfills that professional development. A master's series designation from ATD, and that would be like the master trainer, the master instructional designer, also fulfills the professional development requirement. There is a little video on this page that I have in the presentation that does go through this in a little bit more detail.
A question, if that's okay. So for the 3 years experience, the slide before this, how is that determined, I guess? Because I think you had said you were kind of an accidental trainer as well, which I would classify myself as that as well in my previous role. I just actually moved to Medical Solutions. And so how would I determine, is that part of the application process, the eligibility of, the last 4 years that I had spent with my previous company, although I didn't necessarily always have a training title, but I did do a lot of the items that you have listed.
Yeah. So when you fill out the application, you'll be asked to put in your a resume, but also you'll need to enter the work experience that's relevant, and it'll ask you what of these capability areas you did in that job. So it'll basically ask you to select off of this list here, which of these items were you involved in? And if you need to know more detail about what's underneath those capabilities, that's where you want to get to be very familiar with the capability model. And there's a nice, I'm going to just type this in the chat, very nice interactive site where you can go in and play around, like click on the different capabilities, and you'll see the statements that are underneath them. And that can help you say, oh, okay, that's what belongs in that category. And I always say to people, make sure you take a look at it and become familiar with it, just so you know. I'll give you one example of something that people do, this category, career and leadership development. But that actually does not include leadership development for you. It's about developing other people's careers and leadership, not your own. And while that's important, it's kind of very generic, and it won't necessarily help you to pass the exam. It's not like foundational knowledge to pass the exam. It's more of a personal capability. And it's in the model, but it's in the personal domain, which is tested, but isn't something you can use for your own professional development to be eligible. Anyway, so this is a little graphic that kind of goes through how you know if it would count or not. So it has to be at least 30 minutes in length. So things that are like YouTube videos that are short wouldn't really qualify because they'd be too short, but also not necessarily trackable or reportable. You need to be able to get some sort of proof that you actually completed it. So like when LinkedIn Learning, for example, they send you a little certificate or something that says you did this and how much time or how many points it's worth, that sort of thing. And so you just need to obtain some sort of proof. And then, was it acquired in the last 3 years for APTD or 5 years for CPTD? University courses would count if they are in one of these areas, but they have to be in those 3 years or 5 year period. And university courses are actually worth a lot because they're worth 45 points a piece. And in a moment, we'll talk about how many hours of professional development you need for each of these. But anyway, because it's 15 points per credit hour. So that's often a good place to get your points if you've taken some classes recently. All right, so the associate professional in talent development requires 3 years of experience in the talent development field, the way I just described it. And then 28 hours of relevant professional development. You'll then need to pass the standardized exam. It has 115 multiple choice questions. It's a time test. You'll have 2 hours to take the exam. And the exam content is primarily focused on foundational knowledge required to be successful in the field, but it's important to know the nature of the questions on the exam are application based. Just because, memorizing theories and terms will not get you through this exam. You will need to understand the concepts well enough that you can apply them at work. And we've been stressing that with people because I think people initially felt like, oh, if I just memorize all these terms, it's like, no. You need to understand them well enough that if you had to, you could use them at work. The content of the exam, and this is for the APTD, covers a subset of the knowledge described in the capability model. 20% of the questions come from the personal capabilities, 50% are from the professional capabilities, and 30% are from the organizational capabilities. There is a link in the presentation, and you will get a copy of this in PDF format that has working links. So it has a test content outline, and on this exam page, there's a link to the test content outline and other sorts of things that give you more details. I always say to people, it's very important to take a close look at the test content outline, and that's because that's what you'll be tested on. And taking a close look at it will give you a better sense about, oh yeah, that's something I already know about. That's something that I don't know that much about, but I would really like to learn more about, and that sort of thing. And I think that can help, especially if you're trying to decide between the APTD and the CPTD. And we'll talk about that in a minute too. So the certified professional in talent development, which used to be the certified professional in learning and performance, or CPLP, requires 5 years of experience in talent development and 60 hours of professional development, as I described it earlier. Now the exam is now one standardized exam, which used to be 2 exams, and even farther back, it used to be 1 exam and a work product. But it has evolved over time, and it's now 1 exam. But the exam has 2 parts. It's 90 multiple choice questions and 10 case management style questions, which are scenario-based questions that are multi-step. You have 3 hours to take the exam. And the content focuses primarily on critical thinking and professional judgment applied to on-the-job situations. So it's even more applied in nature than the APTD. It also focuses more on sort of organizational capabilities and sort of higher level skills than the APTD. And I'll give you an example. For the APTD, in the career leadership development category, it talks more about knowledge of different methods of leadership development, knowledge of different methods of career assessment or something like that. But when you look at the CPTD, it really talks about skill in actually implementing a leadership development program. I mean, things like that. So you're really looking at sort of a higher level, somewhat more strategic level. So if you haven't done that already, it may be difficult for you to get through the exam of the CPTD. I myself had a lot of experience, and I could have taken what was the CPLP when I took the APTD, but I decided for myself that it had been a long time since I'd taken a timed exam, and I'm like, let me start here because I didn't know if I was ready, to go for the CPLP at the time. So anyway,
Hey, Sue,
mhm,
can I ask you a question about that?
mhm.
So I understand you don't have to do both, right? Like it can be one or the other based on your work experience. Is that right?
Yes.
'Cause it's,
You don't have to do both.
okay. Because I know someone who has been in the training development or talent professional space for about a year and a half, but he had a career change, basically was in the restaurant business. And so he did a lot of training, I guess you could say, with his role. And he took and got the CPTD, even though he's only, been in the role he is now for a year and a half. So I'm guessing that's because he was able to provide enough of work experience from his past roles.
Yes, and if you've been doing, like I said, if you're that, like for example, my background was eclectic. I did a lot of different things, including running a nonprofit, and I, worked in healthcare for many years and doing a lot of different things, like including process improvement, things like that. So I never had a role that was ever officially a talent development or training role, but I did a lot of that and developed programs and so forth in just about all of my jobs. And so I had enough experience that I could document. And like he did, well, he pulled from his prior position. And I think you can pass it. I think it can be done. It just have to be careful. I think if you're, depending on how much you have done in that field. So if you've actually done quite a bit, and even though it's not called talent development or, but you've done a lot of things that are covered in the capability model, then it's fine to go for the more senior level if you think you can do it. And again, I just tell people, take a look at the test content outline. That will really tell you whether or not you think you can do it. Some people say, well, I want to be able to do those things. And I'm like, well, if you haven't really done them, or you haven't at least done a fair amount of them, it may be difficult because CPTD is very application oriented. And so if you haven't sort of step by step had to do some of these things, it's just those case management style questions may be a challenge for you. But anyway, so the personal capabilities 20% of the questions on the CPTD are from personal capabilities, 45% are from the professional domain, and 35% are from the organizational domain. It sounds very similar to the APTD. People said, oh, well, it's not very much difference. And it may not be in terms of percentages, but when you look at the actual statements that are covered, you'll see that there's a much more heavy focus on organizational capabilities, as well as even under the professional capabilities, sort of a more senior level, like I was saying, actually implementing a program or, measuring that program or being able to, right? So you've got a lot of things in there that are really more, I'd say, a somewhat more senior level. So just look carefully at those before you decide. I'm actually doing a webcast next week about that decision. And if I can find it, I'll chat out the link to you before we're done here. Okay, so moving on. There. Now, if you're interested in pursuing certification, there's some steps you can take. So you download and read the certification handbook. And at the end of this presentation, I have a page with links that includes a link to the handbooks. And that helps because you can read in the handbook. It includes the content outline. It includes a gap analysis. It's just a pencil and paper one, but still helpful. It also includes a suggested reading list. There are a lot of books on that list, and people tend to get nervous and they say, oh, I have to read all these books. You don't have to read all the books, but the books are in there because those are the books that were used in the creation of the exam. So those are the texts that were used by the item writers when they needed to have backup for the answers. So it's important. It's not like you can read all those books and again pass, but if you have an area that you don't know very much about, a book from that list is maybe a helpful thing for you to get, or get out of the library. I know somebody who I thought she was on one of our webcasts. She studied for the CPTD. She took all the books out of the library and read them all. There's a lot of books on that list. And I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive that she passed. So I'm not saying you should do that, but it's possible to do that. So it was interesting. Anyway, once you've sort of gone through that handbook and really read it and carefully looked at the content outline, there's also sample questions in the handbook. You then make a study plan. Think about how you learn best. There's different options. Most people study between 60 and 100 hours for the exams, depending on your personal experience and study preferences and whether you're going for the APTD or the CPTD. The APTD applicants report they study between 60 and 80 hours, and CPTD is between 80 and 120 generally. And again, it sort of depends on how much experience you have and how much that you know about some of these topics. So once you've made a study plan, and there's a study guide that I can also share a link with you. The study planning guides just really go through similar, you have the gap analysis and all of that, but it also gives you a sample study plan and over a certain period of weeks, which things to focus on and things like that. So the study planning guide is helpful in thinking about how you might want to organize your time. I also highly recommend you look for a study group if you can, because there are many local chapters that support a study group for either CPTD or APTD or both, and most of them are now virtual. So it's actually somewhat easier to find one now than it used to be, because if your local chapter wasn't providing one in the past, you were pretty much out of luck. Now there are many that are virtual. And again, there's a link at the end of the presentation that you can go to a page on our website that gives you a list of the ones that we know about. Chapters are supposed to tell us, and they usually do, but sometimes there's someone out there we don't know about. How are we doing for time here? Let's see, I want to make sure, oh, we're fine,
Good.
okay.
Yeah. Hey, and I found your webinar and I shared the link.
Oh, good, thank you, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a question we get a lot, and it's actually not, it's one of those it depends type of question. It's not that clear sometimes for people. So anyway, so in terms of prep resources, one resource we recommend is the Talent Development Body of Knowledge. That's really it's for everyone. It's not just for people who are taking the exam. And it goes through all of the knowledge and skill statements that are in the capability model, and it provides information about all of them. But it focuses mainly on the what and the why, and not really the how. And since the exams are both quite application oriented, just reading the sections of the body of knowledge that apply to the exam is not really going to get you there. Like I said, you've got to really dig deeper and make sure you understand actually how to do these things. And that's where some of the other texts come in handy, or that's another area where the study group is very helpful, because you can discuss with your peers what they do. There are also prep courses. They've been updated to reflect the new content, and it's on a new platform, which is quite nice and interactive. They also have a full-length practice test, which we don't currently have separately. However, just so you know, in January, we will be having a new, rolling out a new practice exam that is going to be available on the same platform where you take the actual exam, and it will have been developed using the same process of the actual exam, and that will be available separate from the prep course. The current prep course will have this, the current prep tests in the prep course will be replaced by the new one. So if you already have the prep course, you'll automatically get the new one. But if you don't have the prep course, you will be able to purchase it, and it's not too expensive. It's going to be like under $100. So that's helpful. So these are two things that you can use to prepare. You don't have to. You don't have to take the prep course. It's not like it's a requirement. And some people find it to be very helpful, and other people find the study group to be more helpful than taking the prep course. So, and it's split down the middle, like about half people take it, half don't. So just so you know, not everybody does. Anyway, if you're interested and you have questions you'd like to ask current credential holders, we have monthly Zoom calls with ATD staff, as well as virtual mentoring calls with current credential holders. Now, for credential holder Zoom calls, we alternate every other month to focus on one of the certifications. So January's APTD and February's CPTD, and so on. But to register to either one of these calls, there's a link on that page that you can go to, and you can choose a call that you want to sign up for. We're actually doing one tomorrow with the CPTD, with CPTD credential holders. And we just did one last week, which was a staff call. And people have found that to be quite helpful because they sort of mimic face-to-face. And everybody seems to enjoy them a lot because it's more of a like virtual mentoring, and the current credential holders enjoy it too. So highly recommend those. So another thing that has changed in terms of how you test is that there's now two ways you can take the exam. You can take it at a secure, professionally run testing center, and there's many locations available around the world. And you can also take it via remote proctoring. Now, this new option was made available in 2020 because of COVID, but we are continuing it. And it allows you to take the exam in your home or other location of your choice. Now, you have to make sure you have the right setup for it. You need to be in a place that's quiet, people won't interrupt you, that has good internet and that kind of thing. And there are some more technical requirements in the link on that page there, on this page here, that you can check to see whether or not you would qualify. And for the most part, if you have a solid internet connection and you have a place where you can take it that you won't be interrupted, and also you can't have a lot of stuff around you. You have to clear the decks. You can't have a lot of things on the wall. So mostly things that have writing on them. But not everybody wants to do that. Some people are like, I'd rather go to a testing center where I know it's going to be quiet and I won't be, distracted or whatever. So it's about 50-50 of it. I think that's 40% are taking it remote proctoring and 60% are taking it in testing centers at this point. So it's interesting. Not everyone does it. And again, to choose your exam date, like when you can test, there's testing windows available every other month. So APTD exams are offered in odd numbered months, and CPTD exams are offered in even numbered months. So again, like APTD's in January and CPTD's in February. So it makes it easy. The way the testing windows are set up now, you get a 90-day window that includes 1 month blackout. And the only reason for that is the other exam is being offered in that month. So you'll be able to choose a January-March window. And so you could test in either one of those months. And if you say choose January, and then you get closer and you're like, oh, I'm not ready, you can switch to March without being charged a transfer fee. So it's important to think carefully about the window that you want to select. When you apply, you actually do have to select that window. And there are deadlines to submit your applications at least 30 days before the testing window begins. And another thing to know is that I'm going to stay back on this page for a second, is that when you apply, so you go in and you actually put in your application and you pay, you have 18 months from that point to pass the exam successfully. And so you can, let's say you apply now and you select the May window or the May-July window next year, you're giving yourself 6 months to prepare, but you'll still have a year and a half to be successful. So let's say you take it in May, you don't pass, you still have time to take it again. Hopefully you won't have to, but that way you can, you don't have to take it immediately. You have some time. We don't recommend dragging out too much. Some people do, but I recommend kind of choosing a deadline and getting yourself kind of tuned into that choice, because then, it also helps you have some accountability, having that deadline. I don't know about you, but it helped me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take it in September. I had the summer to prepare. And once I scheduled my exam, I'm like, okay, this is it. So, okay. So reasons for earning credentials. So it takes time and effort, and it's not a simple decision, but those who've gotten it have found to have great value in the process. So they talk about how the process itself is almost as valuable as getting the credential. And if you talk to these folks and you go to one of these Zoom calls or something, you'll see that they learn a lot in the process. And I think almost all of them say it's very valuable. It's something they can use immediately. It's not, while some of it's theoretical, it does help fill in the blanks if you don't know much about those sorts of things. Like for me, it filled in the blanks about, oh, that's why that works. Like now I know, or here's a great process. That's something if I didn't know that, so that's something that would help me do a better job in the future. So I found it to be really helpful, just filling in those blanks for me. It helps with professional growth, job-specific competencies. It can help with mobility and marketability. And it helps boost your confidence. That's another thing that people say over and over again. I just felt more confident. It was an external body that was sort of giving me the, good housekeeping seal of approval that, I know what I'm talking about. So they feel like they have that more credibility, but also just for their own confidence, it validates what they already know. This is the page that has the links, and I just want to point out a couple of things. And the active candidates page is helpful as it includes the most recent handbooks and the study guides and some other things. So there's a lot of other files that are, it's not a very pretty page, but it basically just provides for you in one place some of the types of documents like the handbooks and so forth. And then links here also take you to the study guides, the study group listing, and then the talent development body of knowledge. Okay, so now we're done with the formal portion of our presentation here. So now I'm going to see if I can start my video, and then I think I'm going to stop sharing. I don't know that I have to share again, unless there's something I need to go back to here. So, okay, so questions. Any burning questions that you have?
Yeah, I did actually, because I'm looking at taking it too, but I have to consider the timing. But my question is, there's a lot of obviously resources and careful thought to preparing to take the exam, but what if you fail? Is there any discount or retakes available, or is you just got to pay again?
So you get, so you have, if you fail the exam, and also how much does everything cost? I'm sure people have a question about that. And I realize that not in this presentation. So I will tell you in a moment. But if you take, let's say, the CPTD exam, it's $900 for the exam fee for ATD members, ATD national members. And it's like $12.50 for non-members. And I can tell you right now that it pays immediately to become a member, because the difference between the non-member and the member fee covers your membership. So I always say to people, it's like kind of a no-brainer to join. But anyway, so that's your initial fee. If you do not pass, it's a $300 retest fee to take it again. It's also $300 to transfer if you pick a window and then decide you need a whole nother window. Now, we do work with people. There are situations that come up, like health issues and so forth, where people have to change, and we don't charge them for that. But we do, like, if you, for example, if you were to choose the May-July window, and then you get to like May and you're like, I'm not ready, and I won't be ready till the fall, the problem is you're already into that window. And so you probably will have to pay a transfer fee. So just be careful when you choose it, that you're really thinking about good timing for yourself. And then if it turns out that you see as you're getting closer that this may be a problem, get a hold of us early. Don't wait till the last minute, because that will end up costing you, which we don't want you to have to do. And you can retake it pretty much as many times as you want, not that you will have to, but within that 18-month period, you can't take it in the same window. So let's say you take it in May, you can take it in July, but you can't take it in May again, second time. So you're able to, or let's say take it in the fall or something like that. So you, some organizations, some other tests, you have to wait like 6 months before you can take it. That's not the case. You can take it in the next window. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I'm going to type in these prices here.
Yep, and there is a cyber sale, right, going on.
Oh,
right
yes. Yes. Oh, it's good.
through the 10th.
Right. Actually, tomorrow. Yes, through the 10th. So, yeah. So this might be a little tough for people, but you have to get your application in by the 10th if you want to take advantage of it. The current cyber sale that's going on for exam fee is that you get with it 3 books. But the prep courses are like 15% off right now during the cyber sale. So you don't have to have applied to do the prep course. So if you decide you want to do that, you can. Oh, and the talent development body of knowledge is included in the prep course. So you don't have to buy both of them. You can get, but you can also buy it separately. And the talent development body of knowledge is $195 for members. And I think it's
$295 for non.
$295. See, there you go. I don't even know what all these prices are right now.
I just looked at it.
It keeps changing. I'm like, and then there's discounts. Anyway, so you can, and that's a digital book. For a little bit more, you can actually get a print copy of it, which I have. You can see this lovely book here. But you do have to have a subscription for the digital book before you're allowed to purchase the print. And part of the reason for that is that if anything changes and you just have the print copy, you won't know that something has changed. So we want people to have that subscription. Let's see. Other questions? Anyone have a burning question out there? You can type it in the chat if you want. So I will, if you can think of something, you can also can always email me. I'm going to put my email in the chat. And I'm happy to sort of jump on a call with people, or like I said, there's these staff calls that we have, which are designed really for people to be able to more like a face-to-face conversation with people. And those have been really helpful, I think, as well, because sometimes it's hard to like answer it through email. And it's a complicated decision. So a lot of times people like to, talk to a person about what makes sense for them. So happy to do that if you want to talk about it. Anything else you want to cover, Deb?
No, I appreciate your time, and we have recorded this. So anyone who was unable to make it today, or learns about it in the future, I was just talking to my sister-in-law about it today, because She just moved back to Nebraska and wasn't a member of ATD. So I will be sharing this video link with her too, because she definitely has the years of experience with it. But thank you so much for sharing that. And Katie, Jace, Javier, thank you for joining our powerful.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It was I was just looking at these certifications this week, so it was helpful to kind of go through them and understand them a little bit more.
Definitely.
Sure. Well, again, let me know if you have any questions. Appreciate it. And thanks for joining us today. And hopefully I'll see you at a future Zoom call.
You definitely will. Thank you, Sue. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.